The morning sun of Zirion Prime cast long shadows across the Galactic Naval Academy's marble courtyards. Students from 12 different worlds walked between the towering buildings, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Some had scales that glittered in the light. Others had multiple arms or eyes that could see colors humans never dreamed of. But today, like most days, they were all talking about the same thing. Humans. Zixthara moved through the crowd with her usual confidence. Her crystalline skin caught the sunlight and threw it back in sharp beams. Other students stepped aside as she passed, knowing she was one of the smartest tactical minds in their year. Behind her walked Creemore, a Vorthan whose enhanced brain could process battle data faster than most computers. "Did you hear what Morrison tried to teach us yesterday?" Zixthara said, her voice carrying the musical tone of her people. "He actually suggested that human cavalry charges were effective military tactics. Cavalry charges, in the age of energy weapons." Creemore's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, which was how his kind showed amusement. "The humans still think running at the enemy with sharp sticks is warfare. No wonder the Galactic Council had to ban them from real military operations." They entered the main lecture hall where dozens of students were already gathered. The room buzzed with conversation in 20 different languages, but most of it centered on the same topic: the Human Restriction Protocol. Every student in the academy knew the basic facts. Humans had joined the galactic community 50 years ago after their first contact wars. They had been eager to help with military operations across the galaxy. But something had gone wrong during those early conflicts. The details were classified, but the result was clear. The Galactic Council had passed the Human Restriction Protocol, limiting humans to small advisory roles and reconnaissance missions only. "It was for the best," said Veltar, a student whose people had evolved from deep-sea creatures. Her wet skin glistened under the classroom lights. "Humans are too primitive for modern warfare. They still think in terms of individual combat instead of coordinated fleet actions." "Exactly," Zixthara agreed. "They lack the mental capacity for proper strategic thinking. Their brains are too focused on emotion and instinct." The conversation stopped when Lieutenant Jake Morrison entered the room. He was tall for a human with short brown hair and calm gray eyes. His uniform was perfectly pressed and he carried himself with quiet dignity, despite the barely concealed mockery of his students. Morrison set his teaching materials on the desk and looked out at the class. He could see the smirks and hear the EI whispered comments. After 3 years of teaching at the academy, he was used to it. "Good morning," Morrison said simply. "Today we will continue our study of human military history by examining the siege tactics used during the Battle of Earth." A ripple of laughter went through the classroom. Zixthara raised her hand without waiting to be called on. "Lieutenant Morrison, with respect, why do we need to study these primitive tactics? The Human Restriction Protocol exists because your species proved unable to adapt to modern warfare. Surely our time would be better spent studying successful military doctrines for more advanced civilizations." Morrison paused for a moment, his expression unchanging. "The academy curriculum requires all students to understand the military history of member species. That includes humanity. But the restriction exists for a reason," Creemore added. "Humans showed during first contact that they cannot be trusted with large-scale military operations. Your own Galactic Council agreed that humans are too unpredictable and dangerous to themselves to participate in real warfare." More murmurs of agreement came from around the room. Morrison had heard these arguments hundreds of times. He pulled up a holographic display showing ancient Earth battles. "Let us examine the tactical decisions made during the siege," Morrison said, ignoring the continued whispers. "Note how human commanders adapted their strategies based on resource limitations and terrain advantages." "Adapted?" Zixthara laughed, her crystalline features reflecting the hologram's light. "You mean they threw bodies at the problem until something worked? There is no elegance, no precision, no mathematical beauty in human tactics. It is all brute force and acceptable casualties." The rest of the class joined in the laughter. Morrison continued his lesson, but fewer and fewer students paid attention. Instead, they whispered among themselves about human failures and primitive thinking. In the back of the classroom, Dr. Helen Carter watched the scene with growing discomfort. She was the Academy's human liaison, responsible for ensuring students and staff were properly integrated into galactic society. But integration was proving difficult when the other species saw humans as intellectual inferiors. Carter had been at the Academy for 5 years, and the situation was getting worse, not better. The alien students' attitude toward humans had hardened from simple dismissal to active contempt. They saw the human restriction protocol as proof that humans were unfit for modern civilization. What troubled Carter most was that she knew the truth behind the restriction. She had access to classified files that these students would never see, files that contained footage and reports from humanity's early military operations in galactic space. Files that would change everything these arrogant young minds believed about human warfare, but those files were sealed for good reason. The Galactic Council had decided that some truths were too dangerous to share. As Morrison's class ended, the students filed out, still laughing and making jokes about human military incompetence. Zixathera was already planning her next research paper, tentatively titled, "Why Humans Should Remain Restricted, a Study in Inferior Combat Psychology." Carter approached Morrison as the last students left. "Another good day at the office?" she asked with bitter humor. Morrison packed his materials slowly. "They will learn eventually." "Will they? Or will they just graduate thinking humans are barely evolved barbarians who got lucky enough to build spaceships?" Morrison looked at her with those calm gray eyes. "Doctor, you and I both know why the restriction really exists. The question is whether these students are ready for that knowledge." Carter thought about the classified files in her office, footage from Kepler 442, New Geneva, and a dozen other worlds where human military units had operated before the restriction. Footage that would explain why the Galactic Council really feared human involvement in large-scale warfare. "Maybe it is time they learned," she said quietly. Morrison nodded. "Maybe it is." Outside, Zixathera was already gathering support for her petition to remove human military history from the Academy curriculum entirely. She believed she was fighting against primitive thinking and inferior tactical doctrine. She had no idea she was about to learn the most terrifying lesson of her young life. 3 days later, Zixathera stood before Dean Quardell's massive desk, holding a datapad filled with signatures. The dean was an impressive sight even by galactic standards. His 6 arms moved independently as he reviewed documents, signed papers, and operated multiple computer terminals at once. His pale blue skin had the texture of ancient marble, and his large black eyes missed nothing. "Dean Quardell," Zixathera began, her voice filled with confident authority, "I present to you a petition signed by over 200 students from 11 different species. We request the immediate removal of human military history from our curriculum." The dean stopped his multitasking and focused all his attention on the young Zilonian. "This is a serious request, Miss Zixathera. What grounds do you offer for such a change?" Creemore stepped forward, his enhanced brain already organizing the arguments they had prepared. "Sir, we believe that studying primitive human warfare is beneath our intellectual capacity. The time spent on human tactics could be better used, learning advanced strategic concepts from more developed civilizations. The human restriction protocol proves that humans are unfit for modern military operations," added Veltar from behind them. "Why should we study the methods of a species that the Galactic Council has declared too dangerous to trust with real warfare?" Dean Quardell leaned back in his chair, his 6 arms folding in a gesture that showed deep thought. "You believe human military doctrine has no educational value?" "None whatsoever," Zixathera said firmly. "Human tactics are based on primitive instincts and emotional responses. They lack the mathematical precision and logical structure that define proper military science. Studying them actually makes us worse strategists because it teaches us to think like barbarians." The dean was quiet for a long moment. As head of the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy, he had seen many young minds filled with arrogance. But he also valued knowledge above all else, even uncomfortable knowledge. "I will consider your petition," he said finally. "But first, I want you to attend a special presentation this afternoon. A human military observer is visiting our academy, and he has offered to share some historical footage with interested students. Zixthera's crystalline features lit up with excitement. Perfect. This will give us a chance to demonstrate to the other students just how inadequate human military thinking really is. When they see actual footage of human combat failures, support for our petition will grow even stronger. Excellent, Creemore agreed. Direct evidence of human incompetence will be much more convincing than theoretical arguments. Dean Quardell made a note on his datapad. Very well. I will arrange for the presentation to take place in the main auditorium at 1400 hours. Dr. Carter will assist with the technical setup. As the students left his office, buzzing with anticipation, Dean Quardell touched a communication device on his desk. Dr. Carter, please come to my office immediately and ask Commander Turner to join us. 20 minutes later, Dr. Helen Carter sat across from the dean while Commander Alex Turner stood by the window. Turner was older than Morrison, with gray hair and scars on his hands that spoke of active military service. His uniform bore decorations that most academy students would not recognize, but Carter knew they represented conflicts in distant star systems. The students have requested to see footage of human military operations, Dean Quardell explained. They believe it will support their petition to remove human studies from our curriculum. Turner turned from the window, his expression unreadable. They want to see footage. Yes, Carter said nervously. They are expecting to witness human failure and incompetence. They think it will prove their point about the restriction protocol. Turner was quiet for a moment, then reached into his uniform and pulled out a small data core. The device was black metal with red warning labels in multiple languages. Commander, Carter said, recognizing the classification markings. Are you certain about this? Doctor, these students represent the next generation of galactic military leadership. They will graduate believing humans are primitive barbarians who got lucky enough to build spaceships. That attitude could be dangerous in the wrong circumstances, Dean. Quardell studied the data core with interest. What does this contain? Combat footage from the Kepler 442 incident, Turner replied. Full documentation of human military operations before the restriction protocol was implemented. Carter felt her stomach tighten. She had read the reports from Kepler 442, but she had never seen the actual footage. The written accounts alone had given her nightmares. Commander, that footage is classified at the highest levels. The Galactic Council specifically ordered it, sealed to prevent panic among member species. Turner met her gaze steadily. The classification was to prevent panic among civilian populations. These are military academy students. If they are going to mock human warfare, they should understand what they are mocking. Dean Quardell extended one of his 6 hands. May I examine this data core? Turner handed it over. The footage is authentic and unedited. It shows exactly what happened when 200 human soldiers encountered 50,000 Vakmor swarm warriors. The dean's large black eyes widened slightly. Every species in the galaxy knew about the Vakmor. They were an insectoid race that had consumed 3 entire star systems before mysteriously disappearing 50 years ago. Most historians assumed they had simply moved to another galaxy. The humans fought the Vakmor? Dean Quardell asked. The humans destroyed the Vakmor, Turner corrected. Completely. The entire species. That is why they vanished from galactic history. Carter stared at the commander. The reports never said humans were responsible for their extinction. The report said many things that were not entirely accurate. The Galactic Council decided that some truths were too disturbing for general knowledge. Dean Quardell held the data core carefully, as if it might explode. And you want to show this to my students? I want to show it to the students who believe humans are primitives unfit for warfare. Let them see what human warfare actually looks like. Then let them decide if they still want to remove human military history from their education. The afternoon sun was beginning to set as students filled the main auditorium. Zixthera had spread word about the presentation, and nearly the entire academy had come to watch. They expected to see fumbling human tactics and primitive strategies that would confirm everything they believed about human inferiority. Dr. Carter stood at the presentation podium, her hands shaking slightly as she connected the classified data. core to the auditorium's main display system. Commander Turner sat in the front row, his expression calm but alert. "Before we begin," Carter announced to the packed auditorium, "I must warn you that this footage contains disturbing content. It shows actual combat operations and may challenge some of your preconceptions about human military capabilities." Laughter rippled through the audience. SCI-FI called out, "Doctor, we are future military officers. I think we can handle watching humans make tactical mistakes." More laughter filled the room. Carter looked at Commander Turner, who nodded grimly. "Very well," Carter said, activating the display. "This footage is from the Kepler 442 incident, recorded 50 years ago during humanity's early participation in galactic military operations. The lights dimmed and the massive screen filled with an image of a human military base under an alien sky. The timestamp in the corner showed it was taken exactly 50 years, 3 months, and 4 days ago. The situation was a routine evacuation mission," Carter continued. "A civilian colony was threatened by an approaching Vakmor swarm. A human unit was assigned to assist with the evacuation and provide rearguard protection." The students settled back in their seats, ready to critique human evacuation procedures and point out tactical errors. They had no idea they were about to witness the most terrifying military operation in galactic history. On the screen, Captain Lisa Brooks was giving orders to her soldiers, preparing for what appeared to be a standard withdrawal. The alien students began taking notes, ready to document every human mistake they observed. They had no idea that in the next hour, everything they believed about warfare was about to change forever. The footage began with what looked like a normal military base on a peaceful planet. Human soldiers moved around the compound, checking equipment and loading supply trucks. Their movement seemed slow and unorganized compared to the precise formations that alien military academies taught. "Look at their formation structure," Creemore whispered to the students around him. "No mathematical precision at all. They are scattered like leaves in the wind." Captain Lisa Brooks appeared on screen, a woman in her 30s with short blonde hair and tired eyes. She was speaking to her second-in-command, Sergeant Danny Rodriguez, a stocky man with dark hair and numerous scars on his arms. "The evacuation is proceeding on schedule," Brooks was saying. "Civilian transport ships are loading families from the outer settlements. We have maybe 6 hours before the Vakmor scouts reach the perimeter." The alien students leaned forward with interest. Everyone in the galaxy had heard stories about the Vakmor. They were insectoid creatures the size of large vehicles, with razor-sharp claws and armor that could stop most energy weapons. Worse, they moved in massive swarms that overwhelmed enemies through sheer numbers. 6 hours should be plenty of time for a proper withdrawal," Veltar commented. "Even humans should be able to organize a retreat in 6 hours. On screen, the human soldiers continued their preparations, but something was wrong with their behavior. Instead of packing equipment for evacuation, they were unpacking more weapons. Instead of preparing defensive positions for a fighting retreat, they were setting up what looked like permanent fortifications. SCI-FI frowned at the display. "What are they doing? Those are not evacuation preparations." Dr. Carter paused the footage and turned to address the auditorium. "I should explain the tactical situation. The Vakmor swarm approaching this colony numbered approximately 50,000 individual warriors. The human force assigned to assist with evacuation numbered exactly 200 soldiers." A ripple of confusion went through the student audience. Those numbers made no sense for any known military doctrine. 50,000 against 200? Asked a student from the middle rows. "What kind of evacuation strategy requires such odds?" "That is what we are about to see," Dr. Carter replied, restarting the footage. The screen showed Captain Brooks receiving a communication from Orbital Command. Her expression grew serious as she listened to the message. When the communication ended, she gathered her soldiers around her. "Change of plans," Brooks announced to her troops. "Orbital surveillance shows the Vakmor main force is moving faster than expected. The civilian transports will not finish evacuation in time." Sergeant Rodriguez checked his tactical display. "How long do we have?" 2 hours, maybe less, Liddy Yao. Alien students watched as the human soldiers absorbed this information, By all military logic, this was the moment when any rational commander would order immediate withdrawal. 200 soldiers could not possibly hold off 50,000 enemies for 2 hours. The only sensible decision was to retreat and save as many lives as possible. Captain Brooks looked at her soldiers for a long moment. Then she said something that made every alien student in the auditorium freeze. "We are not withdrawing." The camera captured the faces of the human soldiers as they heard this order. None of them looked surprised. None of them protested. A few actually smiled. "Sir," Rodriguez said, 50,000 Vakmor against our unit. Those are impossible odds." "Yes, they are," Brooks agreed. "Which means the Vakmor will not expect us to engage them directly. They will expect us to run. But we are not running. No, Sergeant. We are going to kill them all." Complete silence filled the academy auditorium. The alien students stared at the screen in disbelief. Creemore's enhanced brain tried to process what he had just heard, but the logic made no sense. "She cannot be serious," Zixthera whispered. "No rational commander would make such a decision." On screen, the human soldiers began preparations that defied everything the students had learned about military science. Instead of establishing defensive positions to delay the enemy, they were setting up what appeared to be offensive positions, designed to channel the Vakmor into specific areas. "They are creating kill zones," observed a student whose people specialized in defensive warfare. "But kill zones only work when you have superior firepower. 200 soldiers cannot generate enough firepower to stop 50,000 enemies." Dr. Carter paused the footage again. "At this point, I must remind you that everything you are about to see is authentic combat footage. No computer simulations, no training exercises. What you will witness actually happened." She looked out at the sea of alien faces, all showing various expressions of confusion and disbelief. The Vakmor had already destroyed 3 star systems before this encounter. Their military tactics had proven effective against every species they had encountered. They had never been defeated in open combat. Commander Turner stood up from his seat in the front row. The Vakmor were not just another enemy species. They were an extinction-level threat to galactic civilization. If they had not been stopped, at Kepler 442, they would have continued consuming worlds until nothing was left. "And you are telling us that 200 humans stopped them?" Zixthera called out, her voice filled with skepticism. "I am telling you to watch the footage and draw your own conclusions," Turner replied. The recording resumed. The first Vakmor. Scouts appeared on the horizon, massive insectoid shapes moving with frightening speed across the landscape. They were even larger than the alien students had imagined, each one the size of a small building with claws that could tear through metal. The human soldiers took their positions. Captain Brooks stood in the center of the formation, completely calm despite the approaching nightmare. "Contact in 30 seconds, Rodriguez reported. "Remember," Brooks called to her soldiers, "they are used to prey that runs. They have never fought prey that hunts back." The Vakmor scouts reached the human perimeter and attacked immediately, expecting the same easy victory they had achieved on dozens of other worlds. But instead of panicked retreat, they met concentrated fire from weapons that seemed specifically designed to penetrate their armor. The first wave of scouts fell within minutes. "How did they know what weapons to use?" asked a student whose people prided themselves on military intelligence. The Vakmor had never been successfully engaged before. How could the humans know their weaknesses? On screen, more Vakmor were arriving. Hundreds, then thousands. The sound of their approach was like thunder, a rumbling that shook the camera. Any normal military force would have been overwhelmed by the sheer psychological impact of facing such numbers. But the human soldiers seemed to become calmer as the odds grew worse. 10,000 contacts and climbing, Rodriguez reported, his voice steady despite the approaching disaster. "Good," Captain Brooks replied. "The more that come, the more we can kill in one place." Zixthera stood up in her seat, her crystalline features reflecting her confusion and growing fear. "This is impossible. No species thinks like this. No rational mind sees worse odds as an advantage." Dr. Carter stopped the footage one more time. "Miss Zixthera, you have spent considerable time studying human psychology for your research paper. In your expert opinion, what mental condition would cause A military commander to see impossible odds as a tactical advantage? The young Zolonian thought carefully, her analytical mind trying to find a logical explanation for what she was witnessing. Madness, she said finally. Only madness would cause such thinking. Yes, Dr. Carter agreed quietly. That is exactly what the Galactic Council concluded. The question you must now ask yourself is this: what happens when madness is applied systematically to military operations? She restarted the footage. On screen, the main Vakmor force was beginning to arrive. 50,000 insectoid killers that had never known defeat, approaching 200 humans who seemed genuinely excited about the impossible fight ahead of them. The alien students watched in growing horror as they began to understand that they were about to witness something far beyond their comprehension. This was not primitive human tactics. This was something else entirely. Something that would haunt their dreams for years to come. The main Vakmor force hit the human positions like a black wave of death. 50,000 insectoid warriors charged across the landscape, their claws gleaming in the alien sunlight. Each creature stood 3 meters tall with armor that had stopped, the weapons of 3 different civilizations. The alien students expected to see the humans break and run. Instead, they watched something that violated every principle of military science they had ever learned. The humans opened fire with weapons that seemed designed specifically to kill Vakmor. But that was not the disturbing part. The disturbing part was how they used themselves as bait. Squad 7, advance to position Alpha, Captain Brooks ordered over the radio. Let them see you. On screen, 12 human soldiers ran forward into an exposed position where thousands of Vakmor could see them clearly. The insectoid warriors immediately changed direction to attack this small, apparently vulnerable group. They are going to be slaughtered, Veltar whispered, her wet skin growing pale as she watched. But Squad 7 did not retreat when the Vakmor charged toward them. Instead, they held their position until the last possible second. Then Sergeant Rodriguez's voice came over the radio. Now. The ground around Squad 7 exploded. Hidden charges that had been planted earlier detonated in perfect sequence, creating a chain reaction that killed over 2,000 Vakmor in less than 10 seconds. The 12 human soldiers vanished in the explosion along with their enemies. Complete silence filled the Academy auditorium. They killed themselves, Creemore said, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly as his enhanced brain tried to process what he had witnessed. They deliberately killed themselves to eliminate the enemy. On screen, Captain Brooks watched the explosion calmly. Squad 7 eliminated. Enemy losses approximately 2,000. Acceptable exchange ratio. Acceptable? Zixthera stood up again, her crystalline features reflecting the horror she felt. 12 lives for 2,000 is acceptable, Dr. Carter? Pause the footage. For humans engaged in total warfare, yes, that is considered an excellent exchange ratio. The students looked at each other in growing fear. This was not military tactics as they understood them. This was something far more terrifying. The footage continued. The remaining human soldiers regrouped and prepared for the next phase of their impossible battle. But instead of being demoralized by the loss of Squad 7, they seemed more focused and determined. Rodriguez, take Squad 3 and draw their attention to the eastern approach, Brooks ordered. How many do you want us to take with us, Captain? All of them. Rodriguez nodded, as if this was a perfectly normal request. He gathered 15 soldiers and moved toward a position that would put them directly in the path of the remaining Vakmor swarm. This is insane. A student from the back of the auditorium called out. They are sending 15 soldiers against tens of thousands of enemies. But the humans had not finished preparing their nightmare tactics. As Squad 3 moved into position, the remaining soldiers were setting up something that made the alien students feel sick to their stomachs. Medical stations? Zixthera read the human text appearing on screen. Why are they setting up medical stations in the middle of a battle? Commander Turner stood up to address the confused students. Because wounded humans make excellent bait. The Vakmor are attracted to the sounds of injured prey. The students stared at him in horror as they began to understand what they were seeing. On screen, Squad 3 engaged the main Vakmor force in what appeared to be a hopeless battle. The 15 humans were quickly overwhelmed, but they did not die quickly. Instead, they fought with a brutal efficiency that kept them alive just long enough to serve their purpose. The sounds of human soldiers screaming in pain drew thousands of Vakmor toward the medical stations. The insectoid warriors expected to find easy victims. Instead, they found the most terrifying trap any species had ever devised. Medical stations were not medical stations at all. They were weapons platforms disguised as places of healing. When the Vakmor swarmed toward the sounds of wounded humans, they ran directly into concentrated firepower that cut through their ranks like invisible blades. But the humans were not finished. The wounded soldiers, some barely alive, continued to serve as bait even as they lay dying. Their pain drew more and more Vakmor into the kill zones, where hidden weapons eliminated them by the thousands. "They are using their own wounded as weapons," Cremor said, his voice barely a whisper. "They are weaponizing their own suffering." The footage showed Captain Brooks moving through the battlefield, coordinating the slaughter with calm precision. She stepped over the bodies of her own soldiers without emotion, focused entirely on maximizing enemy casualties. Squad 5, position yourselves in Sector 7. Make sure you are visible when you get wounded. Understood, Captain. How long do you want us to stay alive after contact? Long enough to draw at least 5,000 targets into range. The alien students watched in sick fascination as Squad 5 deliberately exposed themselves to Vakmor, claws, taking wounds that would normally require immediate medical attention, but instead of seeking help, they used their injuries to lure more enemies into carefully prepared ambush zones. "Captain," Rodriguez's voice came over the radio, weak with pain but still determined. "I count 15,000 more contacts approaching. From the north." "Good," Brooks replied, reloading her weapon with mechanical precision. "Channel them toward the civilians." "Toward the civilians?" Zixthara screamed, finally reaching her breaking point. "They are using civilian evacuation sites. As bait?" Dr. Carter paused the footage again. "The evacuation sites are empty. The civilians were moved to secure positions hours ago, but the Vakmor do not know this." On screen, thousands of Vakmor warriors rushed toward what they thought were helpless, civilian targets. Instead, they found Captain Brooks and her remaining soldiers waiting in positions that offered no retreat and no escape. "Final phase," Brooks announced to her troops. "Remember, we do not need to survive this. We only need to complete the mission." What happened next broke every rule of warfare that the alien students had ever learned. The humans did not fight to win ground or to survive the battle. They fought to inflict maximum casualties with no regard for their own lives. Captain Brooks personally led a charge into the center of the Vakmor swarm. She was not trying to break through enemy lines or capture a strategic position. She was trying to get close enough to the Vakmor Queen to deliver a weapon that would destroy the entire command structure. The students watched in horrified silence as Brooks fought her way through hundreds of enemies, taking wounds that should have killed her, but somehow staying alive through pure determination. Vakmor claws tore through her armor and opened deep cuts across her body, but she kept moving forward. "She is going to die," Beltar whispered. "She has to know she is going to die." "Of course she knows," Commander Turner said quietly. "That is the point. She is not trying to survive, she is trying to complete the mission." On screen, Captain Brooks reached the Vakmor Queen, a massive creature that stood twice as tall as the other warriors. Brooks was bleeding from dozens of wounds, her armor was torn and one of her arms hung useless at her side. But she was smiling. The Queen's claws pierced through Brooks' chest, lifting her off the ground. Any normal species would have died instantly from such wounds. But Brooks had one last action to complete. She activated the weapon she had carried through the entire battle, a device that released something into the Vakmor Queen's body. The Queen convulsed and screamed, then collapsed. Within seconds, every Vakmor warrior on the battlefield began to fall as well. Captain Brooks died with that smile still on her face, watching 50,000 enemies die around her. The footage ended with the aftermath. 200 human soldiers had engaged 50,000 Vakmor warriors. Final casualties: 197 humans dead, 3 critically wounded. Vachmore survivors, 0. Mission status, complete victory. The Academy auditorium was completely silent. The alien students sat frozen in their seats, trying to process what they had witnessed. Finally, Zixithara found her voice. "Why?" she asked, her crystal features reflecting her confusion and terror. "Why would anyone fight like that?" Dr. Carter looked out at the sea of horrified faces. "Because that is what humans do when we decide something must be stopped. We do not fight to survive. We fight to win, regardless of the cost." Commander Turner stepped forward. "The Galactic Council did not ban humans from warfare to protect the galaxy from our incompetence. They banned us to protect the galaxy from our competence." The terrible truth settled over the students like a heavy blanket. The human restriction protocol was not about human weakness. It was about human strength turned into something that other species could not comprehend or control, something that even other humans feared to unleash. The next morning, the Galactic Naval Academy felt like a different place. Students walked through the hallways in small, quiet groups. The usual chatter and laughter had disappeared. In the dining halls, conversations stopped whenever someone mentioned humans or the footage they had seen. Zixithara sat alone in the library, surrounded by books about human psychology and military history. Her crystalline features looked dull in the artificial light, as if the shine had gone out of them. She had not slept since watching the Kepler 442 footage. Creemore found her there 3 hours later, his own enhanced brain struggling to make sense of what they had witnessed. "I have been running calculations all night," he said, sitting down across from her. "The tactical decisions the humans made should not have worked. No computer simulation predicts success with their methods. That is because no computer can simulate insanity," Zixithara replied without looking up from her books. "I have been reading human military theory. Do you know what I found?" Creemore shook his head. "They have entire sections dedicated to acceptable casualty rates. 90% losses are considered reasonable if the mission succeeds. 90%, Creemore. They plan for almost everyone to die." Other students began gathering around their table, drawn by the discussion. Word had spread quickly through the academy about what the footage contained. Everyone wanted to understand what they had seen. "But why?" asked Veltar, her wet skin still pale from the shock. "Why would any species develop such tactics?" "Because they work," said a new voice. Lieutenant Morrison had approached their table quietly. He looked tired, as if he had not slept either. "You saw the results. 200 soldiers eliminated a threat that had consumed 3 star systems." Zixithara looked up at him with new eyes. Before yesterday, she had seen Morrison as a primitive teacher of outdated tactics. Now she saw something else entirely. "You knew," she accused. "You knew what we would see in that footage." Morrison nodded slowly. "I fought in action similar to Kepler 442 before the restriction was implemented. That is why I teach here instead of serving in active operations." "Because the Council banned human military involvement?" "No," Morrison said quietly. "Because I asked to be transferred. After seeing what humans do in total warfare, some of us requested assignment to non-combat roles." The student stared at him, a human soldier who had voluntarily removed himself from combat because he was afraid of his own species' methods. "What did you see out there?" Creemore asked. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "I saw humans solve problems that no other species could solve, and I saw the price we pay for those solutions." Dr. Carter appeared at the library entrance looking for Morrison. When she saw the gathered students, she approached carefully. "How are you all feeling after yesterday's presentation?" she asked. "Confused," Zixithara admitted. "Terrified. I do not understand how humans can think the way they do." "We do not think differently," Carter explained. "We just have different priorities. When we decide something must be stopped, we are willing to pay any price to stop it." "Any price," Veltar repeated. "Including your own lives." "Especially our own lives," Morrison added. "Individual survival becomes irrelevant when the species or mission is at stake." Dean Quardell entered the library with several other faculty members. The six-armed administrator looked troubled, his usual calm confidence shaken by the events of the previous day. "Students," he announced, "I want to discuss the petition you submitted regarding human military studies." Zixthara stood up slowly, her petition forgotten in the wake of what she had learned. "Dean, I would like to withdraw the petition." "Why?" "Because I was wrong. Completely terrifyingly wrong. Human military doctrine is not primitive. It is something else entirely. Something we need to understand." Creemore nodded agreement. "The tactical principles they demonstrated yesterday are beyond anything we study here. They have weaponized concepts that other species cannot comprehend, such as acceptable loss," Zixthara said, "tactical sacrifice, victory through self-destruction. They fight to win regardless of survival, which makes them the most dangerous military force in known space." Dean Quardell considered this carefully. "And what is your recommendation regarding the human restriction protocol?" The students looked at each other, then back at the dean. Finally, Zixthara spoke for all of them. "The restriction should be maintained, not to protect humans from us, but to protect us from humans." "You believe they are that dangerous?" "Dean," Creemore said, his enhanced brain having processed all the implications, "the footage showed us one small unit destroying an extinction-level threat. Imagine what would happen if humans decided that another species posed a similar threat." The implications hung in the air like a dark cloud. Every student understood what Creemore meant. If humans could eliminate 50,000 Vakmor with 200 soldiers, what could they do with a full military fleet? "There is something else you should consider," Dr. Carter said quietly. "The Kepler 442 incident happened 50 years ago. Human military technology and tactics have advanced significantly since then." "You mean they have gotten better at warfare?" Veltar asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Much better," Morrison confirmed. "The methods you saw yesterday are considered outdated by current human military standards." Complete silence fell over the library. The students tried to imagine warfare more advanced than what they had witnessed, and failed. "Then why do humans accept the restriction?" Zixthara asked. "If you are as powerful as the footage suggests, why do you allow the Council to limit your military involvement?" Morrison and Carter exchanged glances. Finally, Morrison answered, "Because we choose to. We understand what we are capable of, and we understand that other species fear us for good reason. We accept the restrictions because we want to be part of galactic civilization, not its destroyers." "But the choice is yours," Dean Quardell observed. "You could reject the restrictions at any time." "Yes," Carter agreed. "The restriction only works because humans enforce it on ourselves. The day we decide to stop accepting it—" She let the sentence hang unfinished, but everyone understood the implication. Over the following weeks, the academy changed completely. Lieutenant Morrison's classes became the most popular on campus. Students who had once mocked human military doctrine now studied it with fearful fascination. Research papers shifted from ridiculing human tactics to analyzing human combat psychology and the tactical applications of acceptable casualties. The library's human military history section, once ignored, became constantly occupied. But the most significant change was in how the students viewed the human restriction protocol. What had once seemed like evidence of human weakness was now understood as the most important peace treaty in galactic history. Zixthara presented her final research paper to a packed auditorium. The title had changed from her original plan, "Why the Human Restriction Protocol Must Be Maintained, a Study in Voluntary Restraint as Ultimate Power." "We have learned that humans are not restricted from galactic warfare because they are primitive or ineffective," she concluded. "They are restricted because they have weaponized concepts that other species cannot understand. Acceptable loss, tactical sacrifice, and victory through destruction of self." She paused, looking out at her fellow students. "Every species in the galaxy fights to survive. Humans fight to win, regardless of survival. This makes them more dangerous than any weapon we have ever developed. Therefore," she continued, "the human restriction protocol should be maintained, not as punishment for human incompetence but as protection for galactic civilization." The auditorium erupted in applause, but it was not the cheerful applause of academic success. It was the grim applause of beings who had looked into the abyss and understood what they had seen. After the presentation, Zix-Thera found Lieutenant Morrison in his office. "Lieutenant, I have one final question." "What is it?" "The footage showed humans choosing to accept terrible casualties to achieve victory. But you also choose to accept restrictions that limit your power. Why?" Morrison looked out his office window at the alien students walking across the campus, laughing and learning together in the peaceful environment of the academy. "Because some victories are not worth the price," he said quietly. "We could rule the galaxy through fear. We could eliminate any species that opposes us, but what kind of existence would that be? You choose restraint. We choose to be better than what we are capable of being. That is the most human thing of all." As Zix-Thera left his office, she realized she had learned the most important lesson of her education. The most dangerous beings in the galaxy were not those who could destroy everything in their path. The most dangerous beings were those who could destroy everything, but chose not to. And somewhere in the depths of space, humanity continued to patrol the borders of civilization, accepting restrictions they could break at any moment, protecting species that feared them, and carrying the burden of being the galaxy's most terrible and most necessary guardians. The restriction would hold, as long as humans chose to honor it, and everyone hoped they would never choose otherwise.
The stars glittered like diamonds against the void as Lieutenant Commander Daniel Wright stared out the viewport of Outpost Helios. The year was 2157, and humanity had spread to several solar systems beyond Earth. Daniel had been stationed at this frontier outpost for 3 months now. It was quiet work, mostly monitoring colonial traffic and scanning for any unusual activity. Daniel sipped his coffee and checked the time. His shift would end in 20 minutes. He was looking forward to calling his wife back on Earth. The distance made communication delayed, but it was better than nothing. The alarm blared suddenly, making Daniel jump. Red lights flashed across the command center. "Sir, we're receiving a distress signal from Proxima Centauri II," called out Ensign Rita Jones from her station. Her fingers flew across the control panel as she pulled up the details. "It's from the research colony. The message is fragmented." Daniel rushed to her side. "Play it." The speakers crackled with static. A woman's terrified voice broke through. "Attacked us. They came from nowhere. Please send. They're hunting us." There. The message cut off abruptly. Daniel looked at his second in command, Lieutenant Greg Peterson. "How long ago was this sent?" 4 hours ago, sir. We're the closest outpost." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Prepare the Valiant for immediate departure. Alert the crew. We leave in 30 minutes." The Valiant was a small but fast response vessel designed for situations exactly like this. Within the hour, they were in hyperspace, racing toward Proxima Centauri II. "What do we know about this colony?" Daniel asked during the journey briefing. Lieutenant Peterson brought up the details on the main screen. Proxima Centauri II Research Station. Established 3 years ago. Population 57. They study xenobiology and planetary adaptation. Nothing military. Nothing that should make them a target. Daniel frowned. "Any known hostile species in that sector?" "None, sir. The area has been peaceful since colonization began." When they emerged from hyperspace 12 hours later, Daniel felt a knot in his stomach. The planet looked peaceful from orbit. Blue oceans, green landmasses, white clouds, but the colony wasn't responding to their hails. "No signs of orbital combat," reported Ensign Jones. "No debris. No radiation signatures." They landed a mile from the colony perimeter. Daniel led a team of 6, weapons ready, moving cautiously through the alien forest. The twin suns of Proxima Centauri cast strange jewel shadows as they approached the settlement. The colony came into view, and Daniel raised his fist, signaling the team to halt. The outer buildings were damaged, walls torn open, equipment scattered. "Life signs," Daniel whispered. Sergeant Ben Miller checked his scanner. Faint readings. 1 human. Building C. They moved forward carefully, checking each structure. The damage was unlike anything Daniel had seen before. Not explosive. Not weapons fire. It looked like something had physically torn through metal and concrete with incredible strength. Inside the main lab, they'd found the first bodies. 3 researchers, their lab coats soaked in blood. Whatever killed them didn't use weapons. The wounds were from claws or teeth. God Almighty, whispered Peterson. In Building C, the communication center, they found her. A woman huddled under a console, clutching a data pad to her chest. She was alive, but barely conscious. Dr. Olivia Martinez. Read her ID badge. Daniel knelt beside her. Doctor, you're safe now. We're with the Earth Federation Navy. Her eyes snapped open, wide with terror. They'll come back, she whispered. They always come back for more trophies. Who? Who did this? I don't know what they are. They weren't like anything in our database. They hunted us, one by one, like sport. She shuddered. They could become invisible. We only saw them when they wanted us to see them. Daniel helped her to her feet. As they turned to leave, he noticed strange markings carved into the wall. Symbols unlike any human language. They showed figures in combat stances and what looked like ritualistic patterns. What are these? He asked. Dr. Martinez looked at them and trembled. They carved those after each kill. I think they were keeping score. As they left the ruined colony, Daniel knew humanity had just encountered something terrible. Not just enemies or rivals, but hunters who saw humans as nothing more than prey. And somewhere out among the stars, they were waiting to hunt again. 6 months passed since the attack on Proxima Centauri II. Daniel Wright stood in the large meeting room at Earth Fleet headquarters. The walls displayed images of 3 more human colonies that had been attacked. Each showed the same pattern of destruction. Each had the same strange markings left behind. Admiral Susan Clark walked to the front of the room. Her gray hair was pulled back tightly, and her face looked tired from too many sleepless nights. This is no longer an isolated incident, she said. We are dealing with a pattern of attacks against human settlements. She pressed a button, and a new image appeared on the screen. It showed a map of human space with red dots marking the attacked colonies. 4 colonies hit in 6 months, 83 dead, 12 missing. This ends now. Admiral Clark formed a special task force that day. Daniel was made part of it, along with Dr. Olivia Martinez, who was still the only person to have seen the attackers and lived. Intelligence Officer Kate Reynolds was put in charge of finding patterns. She was young but brilliant. She spent days going through every piece of data from the attacked colonies. These aren't random, Kate said during their 3rd meeting. Look at the timing. Each attack happened when the colonies were most vulnerable, when ships were away or communications were down for maintenance. Daniel nodded. They're studying us before they attack. Not just studying, said Kate. They're hunting. Like predators stalking prey. The name stuck. From that day on, they called the mysterious attackers predators or hunters in their reports. Dr. Jack Moore joined the task force next. He was a xenobiologist who had studied dozens of alien species. He examined the few pieces of evidence they had from the attack sites. These markings tell a story, he said, pointing to the strange symbols found at each colony. They're not just random carvings. I believe they're recording their hunts. During the search of the 4th attacked colony, on a small mining outpost near Alpha Centauri, they found something new. A piece of alien technology that had been damaged during the attack. It was small, like a wrist device, with a screen that still worked. Dr. Moore spent weeks studying it. When he finally called the task force together, his face was grim. This device contains records, he said, visual records of other hunts, not just against humans. I've counted at least 15 different species in these recordings. He showed them the footage, strange alien worlds, creatures that looked nothing like humans, and always the same ending. The aliens being hunted down by shadowy figures that moved too fast to see clearly. Some of these species, Dr. Moore continued, aren't in any of our databases, I think. I think they might have been hunted to extinction. The room fell silent as everyone understood what this meant. They target technological species, Kate said, looking through her notes. Every colony that was hit had something in common. They were all doing advanced research or using new technology. Daniel remembered what Dr. Martinez had told him months ago. They keep score. They take trophies. Admiral Clark stood up. I'm upgrading this to a level 1 threat to humanity. We need to understand these hunters better if we're going to stop them. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the footage from the alien device, all those species hunted for sport. He looked out his window at the stars and wondered if the hunters were out there right now, watching, waiting to strike again. The next morning, a message came in. Another colony had gone silent. This time, it was bigger, a settlement of over 300 people on Ta City Prime. As Daniel boarded the ship that would take them to investigate, he knew this was different. The hunters weren't just attacking random outposts anymore. They were getting bolder, and humanity still had no way to fight back. Captain Paul Williams did not like the plan, but he knew it was necessary. His ship, the UES Raptor, was small and fast with special stealth technology. It was perfect for this mission. We need to observe them in action, Admiral Clark had told him. We need to understand how they hunt. Intelligence had picked up strange energy readings near a planet called Velara IV. The planet was home to a peaceful species called the Tyranni. They were not part of the Earth Alliance, but they had started to develop space travel. Paul's mission was simple but dangerous. Go to Velara IV, stay hidden, and watch what happened if the hunters attacked. I don't like being bait, said Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez as they approached the planet. We're not bait, Paul replied. We're just observers. Keep our stealth systems at maximum. No one fires a weapon unless I give the order. The Raptor took position behind one of Velara's moons. From there, they could monitor the Tyranni settlement while staying hidden. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then, on the 4th day, their sensors picked up a new ship entering the system. It doesn't match any known design, said Ensign Frank Carter from his station. It's using some kind of cloaking technology, but not like ours. I can see it on thermal sensors. Paul watched the main screen as the alien ship approached the planet. It was large and shaped like a crescent moon, with strange spikes along its hull. They're launching smaller craft, reported Maria. 5 of them, heading toward the main Tyranni city. Paul gave the order to follow, keeping their distance. The Raptor shadowed the hunter ships down to the planet's surface. What they witnessed next would haunt Paul's dreams for years to come. The hunters landed on the outskirts of the Tyranni city. They were tall, much taller than humans, with reptilian features and strange jaw structures that looked like mandibles. They wore armor that seemed to shift colors to match their surroundings. They're recording this data, whispered Dr. Laura West, the xenobiologist on Paul's team. Look at those devices on their wrists. Similar to what we found. The hunters moved into the city with terrifying efficiency. They didn't attack all the Tyranni. They selected certain ones, those who appeared to be leaders or who fought back. The rest they simply ignored. They're choosing targets, Paul realized, like trophy animals. One of the hunters took down a large Tyranni who had been defending a building. The hunter stood over its prey, made a clicking sound, and then pulled out a blade. What happened next made Dr. West turn away in disgust. They're taking samples, Paul said, keeping his voice steady. Trophies. Their observation continued for hours as the hunters methodically moved through the city. The Tyranni fought bravely, but had no chance against the advanced technology. Sir, I think one of them has spotted us, Frank said suddenly, his voice tense. Paul looked at the screen. One of the hunters had stopped its pursuit of a Tyranni and was looking directly toward the hillside where the raptor was hidden. Impossible. Our stealth systems. Before he could finish, an alarm sounded. Something had hit their ship. They can see us. Take off. Now. Paul shouted. The raptor's engines fired up, but two hunters were already racing toward them. One jumped, impossibly high, and landed on the ship's hull. We have a breach in Section 4, Maria reported. Paul grabbed his weapon. Secure the bridge. I'm going to deal with our guest. The fight was brief but brutal. Paul and 3 security officers confronted the hunter that had boarded them. 2 of his officers died before they managed to wound the alien. Even injured, it was incredibly strong. The raptor finally broke atmosphere, but the hunter ships pursued them. Jump to hyperspace, Paul ordered as he made it back to the bridge, bleeding from a cut on his forehead. They escaped, barely. But they had what they came for. Clear images of the hunters, data on their weapons and tactics, and most importantly, they now knew the hunters were not invincible. One of them had bled on Paul's ship. Commander Nickel Fisher stood in the defense control room of New Haven Colony. 6 months had passed since Captain Williams' mission, and humanity had been working nonstop to prepare for the next hunter attack. New Haven was one of the most remote human colonies, making it a likely target. All detection systems online, reported Officer Sam Davis. If they come, we'll see them. Nicole nodded. The room was filled with new technology developed by Dr. Olivia Martinez. After studying the data from previous attacks, Dr. Martinez had found a way to detect the hunter's cloaking technology. The system works by finding tiny distortions in light patterns, Dr. Martinez had explained. When something is cloaked, it bends light around it. Our sensors can now detect that bending. For weeks, Nicole and her team had been on high alert. Every colony was now equipped with these sensors, waiting for the hunters to strike again. The alarm sounded at 300 hours. Nicole had been dozing in her chair, but was instantly awake. Contact. 3 ships entering the system, called Sam. They matched the hunter profile. Nicole activated the colony-wide alert system. This is not a drill. All civilians to shelters. Defense teams to your positions. Unlike previous colonies, New Haven was ready. Hidden weapon emplacements powered up around the settlement. Soldiers in special armor took their positions. The trap was set. They're landing 2 miles from the east perimeter, Sam reported. Exactly where we predicted. Nicole watched on the monitors as thermal signatures moved through the forest toward the colony. The hunters thought they were invisible, but the new sensors tracked their every move. Hold fire until my command, Nicole ordered through her comlink. Let them get close. The hunters approached the colony's edge. They'd moved with confidence, clearly not expecting resistance. The lead hunter paused at the tree line, studying the quiet buildings. Now, Nicole said calmly. The defense grid activated. Specialized weapons fired pulses of energy that disrupted the hunters' cloaking technology. Suddenly, the hunters were visible. Tall, muscular forms with reptilian features and dreadlock-like appendages. The hunters seemed confused, looking down at their wrist devices as their invisibility failed. Before they could react, the human defense teams opened fire. 2 hunters fell immediately. The others scattered, seeking cover. They were formidable fighters, but they had lost their greatest advantage: surprise. They're retreating to the northwest, Sam reported. Don't let them regroup, Nicole ordered. Teams 2 and 4, cut them off. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, 4 hunters lay dead. 2 had escaped back to their ship. Nicole walked among the bodies of the aliens who had terrorized humanity for months. Up close, they were even more intimidating. Over 7 feet tall with powerful limbs and fierce mandibles. Get these bodies to the research center, she ordered. And all their equipment too. The scientists worked quickly, examining the hunter bodies and technology. Dr. Martinez made the most important discovery. They use quantum entanglement for communication, she explained, showing Nicole a device from one of the hunter's wrists. That's how they coordinate attacks across such vast distances. The biggest breakthrough came from weapons development. Using the hunter's own technology, Earth scientists created new weapons specifically designed to counter hunter advantages. Word spread across human space. The hunters had been defeated in battle. For the first time, a human colony had successfully defended itself. Admiral Clark called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. "The hunters will be back," she said. "This loss will confuse them, maybe even anger them. But they'll adapt. We need to prepare for their next move." The data recovered from the dead hunters revealed something surprising. In all their recorded history, no prey species had ever successfully fought back. Humans were the first to kill hunters in battle and survive. In the months that followed, the hunters seemed to withdraw. No new attacks were reported. But Nickel and the other military leaders knew they weren't gone. They were watching, learning, planning, and humanity was doing the same. Admiral Susan Clark stood before the United Earth Defense Council. The large screen behind her showed images of hunter ships and their known territories. "We can no longer wait for them to attack us," she said firmly. "It's time to take the fight to them." The council members looked nervous. Taking offensive action against an alien species was a big step. "What exactly are you proposing, Admiral?" asked Counselor John Perry. "Operation Counterhunt," she replied. "Using the technology we've captured, we've located what appears to be a hunter outpost in the Epsilon Eridani system. I want to send in a strike team." The council debated for hours, but finally gave their approval. The hunters had killed too many humans to ignore. It was time to hunt the hunters. Major Alex Reyes was chosen to lead the mission. He had 15 years of Special Forces experience and had fought the hunters during the New Haven attack. His team consisted of 12 elite soldiers, each an expert in their field. "This isn't about revenge," Alex told his team during the final briefing. "This is about survival. We need to understand our enemy better. Our primary objective is to gather intelligence. Fighting is a last resort." Their ship, the UES Nightshade, was humanity's most advanced stealth vessel. It had been upgraded with technology reverse-engineered from the hunters' own cloaking devices. The journey to Epsilon Eridani took 5 days. When they arrived, they found the hunter outpost exactly where intelligence had said it would be. A small base built into an asteroid. "No signs they've detected us," reported Lieutenant Carly Adams, the team's sensor specialist. "Their security is focused outward, not inward." Alex nodded. "They're not used to being hunted. Let's keep it that way." The team boarded the outpost through a maintenance airlock. Inside, the alien architecture was strange. Corridors with high ceilings and odd angles, designed for beings much taller than humans. "Stay low, move slow," Alex whispered. They moved deeper into the outpost, recording everything with their helmet cameras. In what seemed to be a control room, they found what they were looking for: a central data terminal. Sergeant Joe Ramirez, their tech expert, went to work connecting their translation software. "I'm in," he said after several tense minutes. "There's a lot here. Ship movements, communication logs, star charts." Alex was looking at something else. A wall covered in strange symbols and images of different alien species. One section showed humans. "What does that say?" he asked, pointing to symbols above the human images. Joe checked his translation program. "It says, Apex Prey. I think that's what they call us." As Joe downloaded the data, Alex examined the trophy wall more closely. The humans weren't displayed like the other species. They were given a place of honor, marked with special symbols. "They respect us," Alex realized. "We're the only ones who fought back successfully." A sudden alarm broke the silence. "We've been detected," Carly warned. "Multiple hostiles headed our way." "Finish the download," Alex ordered. "We need that data." The team took defensive positions as heavy footsteps approached. Joe worked frantically at the terminal. "Almost there. Got it." He pulled the data cord just as the first hunter appeared in the doorway. The firefight was brief but intense. The team used special weapons designed to penetrate hunter armor. 2 of Alex's soldiers were wounded, but all the hunters went down. "We got what we came for," Alex said. "Now for Phase 2. Before leaving, they planted small tracking devices on 3 hunter ships docked at the outpost. The devices were nearly undetectable, designed to monitor the ship's movements without being discovered. The team made it back to the Nightshade and escaped the system before reinforcements arrived. When they returned to Earth, the data they brought back changed everything. The tracking devices were working, sending back the locations of hunter ships as they moved through space. For the first time, humanity could see how the hunters operated. They weren't just random attacks. The hunters had staging areas, supply lines, and a command structure. In her office, Admiral Clark reviewed the mission results with a grim smile. "Now we know where they live," she said. "It's time for Phase 3. The tracking devices on the hunter ships worked better than anyone had hoped. For 6 months, they sent back data on ship movements, stopping points, and communication patterns. Slowly, a map of hunter territory emerged, and at the center of it all was a single star system. "We believe this is their home world," Fleet Admiral Eric Bailey said, pointing to a star on the large display. "All major hunter movements eventually lead back to this system." The United Earth Defense Council had gathered for what might be the most important meeting in human history. Admiral Clark, Commander Wright, now promoted to captain, and Dr. Martinez sat at the main table. "Are we certain?" asked one of the council members. Dr. Martinez nodded. "The data is clear. We've tracked over 50 hunter ships. All of them returned to this system eventually." Admiral Bailey continued, "We've been gathering our forces quietly. Every ship we can spare without leaving our colonies defenseless. This will be the largest fleet humanity has ever assembled." Captain Wright spoke next. "Dr. Martins and I have been studying hunter psychology based on their trophy-taking and communication patterns. We believe they function on a strict hierarchy based on hunting prowess. In simple terms," Dr. Martinez added, "they respect strength and fear weakness. They don't understand mercy or surrender. To them, these are signs of being prey, not predator." Wright pulled up images on the screen. "We've developed psychological warfare tactics based on this understanding. We don't need to destroy them all. We just need to prove we're the more dangerous species." Over the next few weeks, small stealth probes were sent to observe the hunter home system. What they found was surprising. The hunters had multiple worlds, all connected by regular ship traffic. Their civilization was advanced, but focused almost entirely on hunting. Their entire society revolves around it. Dr. Martinez explained during a briefing. Status, leadership, even their religion is based on hunting and trophy-taking. What was most interesting was what the probes didn't find. Despite their advanced technology, the hunters showed signs of a species in decline. Their population seemed small compared to the size of their territory. "They're dependent on the technology they've stolen from other species," Wright noted. "They don't seem to innovate much on their own. They take what works from their prey and adapt it." Admiral Bailey saw an opportunity in this. "So they're scavengers as much as hunters." "Exactly," agreed Wright. "And that makes them vulnerable." The plan they developed was called Operation Alpha Predator. It would be a multi-pronged attack, hitting several hunter worlds simultaneously, but the main target would be their home world. The Earth fleet gathered at the edge of explored space. Over 200 ships of various sizes, from small fighters to massive carriers. It was an impressive sight, but everyone knew the hunters would fight fiercely to defend their home. The night before the operation was set to begin, Captain Wright found Dr. Martinez in the observation deck of the flagship, staring out at the assembled fleet. "Nervous?" he asked. She nodded. "We've come so far since that day at the research colony. Sometimes I still have nightmares about what happened there." "Tomorrow we make sure it never happens again," Wright said firmly. "Do you think they can change?" she asked. "Is there any hope for peace between our species?" Wright considered this. Maybe. But first we need to earn their respect. In their culture, only equals can have peace. Everyone else is just prey. As the fleet prepared for the jump to hunter space, Admiral Bailey addressed all ships. For too long, these aliens have hunted across the stars, wiping out entire species. Tomorrow, we show them that humanity is not prey. We are the apex predators now. Throughout the fleet, soldiers and crew members prepared for battle. Some prayed. Others checked their weapons one last time. All knew that history would be made tomorrow. The hunters were about to become the hunted. Operation Alpha Predator began at 600 Earth Standard Time. The human fleet jumped into hunter space in perfect formation, immediately launching fighters and attack craft. The hunters were caught completely by surprise. They had never been attacked in their home system before. Their ships scrambled to respond, but the confusion was clear in their movements. Admiral Bailey watched from the bridge of the UES Defiance, the largest battleship in the human fleet. All ships, commence firing on designated targets, he ordered. Remember the plan. We're not here to destroy their civilization. We're here to prove a point. The human fleet targeted military installations and hunter ships. They carefully avoided civilian areas that the probes had identified. This wasn't about revenge. It was about changing the relationship between the two species. While the main fleet engaged the hunter forces, a smaller mission was underway. Captain Lisa Foster led a team of 20 Special Forces soldiers aboard the stealth ship UES Shadow. Their target was the surface of the hunter homeworld. "We're approaching the landing zone," Lisa told her team. "Everyone remember your objectives. We get in, complete the mission, and get out. No heroics." The Shadow landed in a forested area 5 miles from the main hunter city. Using portable cloaking technology developed from Hunter Tech, Lisa's team moved undetected toward their target. The hunter city was massive, with tall, spire-like buildings and wide streets. Even in the midst of an attack, the hunters moved with discipline and purpose. "Look at their architecture," whispered Sergeant Carl Jenkins. "Everything is designed to honor hunting. Those murals show hunting scenes from different worlds." Lisa nodded. "Stay focused. The Temple of Trophies should be at the center of the city." The temple was easy to find. The largest building in the city, decorated with symbols and trophies from hundreds of worlds. This was the heart of hunter culture, where they displayed their greatest achievements. "Security is heavy," reported Private Zoe Parker, who was scouting ahead. "At least 20 guards at the main entrance." Lisa smiled. "We're not using the main entrance." Using sound suppressors and specialized weapons, the team eliminated hunter patrols around the back of the temple. They entered through a maintenance tunnel that their intelligence had identified. Inside, the temple was even more impressive. Vast halls filled with trophies from countless species. Some were clearly ancient, preserved for generations. According to the intel, the central trophy hall should be up ahead, Lisa said. "That's our target." They encountered minimal resistance inside. Most of the hunters were responding to the space battle above their world. The central trophy hall was a massive circular room with a domed ceiling. Arranged in a spiral pattern were the most prized trophies from what must have been hundreds of species. At the very center, a new display was being prepared, with human artifacts. "They were getting ready for us," Carl said softly. They expected to win. Lisa's team worked quickly, setting up the devices they had brought. These weren't bombs or weapons. They were projectors, message systems, and a special gift for the hunters. While the team worked, Lisa explored the hall. The trophies told a story of countless hunts across the galaxy. So many species, some probably extinct now. The hunters had been doing this for thousands of years. "We're ready," Carl reported. Lisa took one last look around, then placed a small object in the center of the human display area. A carved wooden predator from Earth, a wolf, with a message etched into its base in the hunter language. "We are not prey." She activated the system. Throughout the temple, holographic images appeared, scenes from the battle above, showing hunter ships being destroyed by human vessels. A message began to play in the hunter language, carefully crafted by Dr. Martinez. Your hunt is over. We are not your prey. We are predators, like you. Remember this day. As they left the temple, alarms began to sound throughout the city. Their presence had been discovered. All teams back to the ship, Lisa ordered. Our mission is complete. In space, the battle was turning in humanity's favor. The hunters fought bravely, but were overwhelmed by human tactics and technology. For the first time in their long history, the hunters were experiencing what it meant to be hunted.